What's up? What's up? What's up? It's your boy, the network. And today's topic is section 5.1, Describe iOS AAA or AAA using local database. This is a topic in the CCNP route exam. It will be known as the CCNP Enterprise exam come February 24th, 2020. Let's take a look at the exam blueprint. My bad. The exam blueprint to see where we came from and where we are headed. Hashtag lab every day. All right, this is the exam blueprint implementing Cisco IP routing. It's exam code 300-101. This, again, was called the CCNP route exam. In the future, it will be called the CCNP Enterprise exam. We just wrapped up the section, VPN section. Today, we are going to start with infrastructure security. We are going to do section 5.1, Describe iOS AAA using local database. After that, we are going to move on using iOS AAA using TACACS Plus and Radius. So, Describe iOS AAA. Notice it says describe here, so we don't really have to do too much configuring, but we are going to do a little hands-on. We're just going to do a little supplemental lab on Boson Netsim and play a little bit with the local database. So, what is AAA? AAA is a way to, I like to describe it as who, what can you do, and what you did. So, who would be considered, who would be like, we're authentic, we're trying to figure out who you are before we grant you access to this network. Right? What you are going to do or what you can do is what the second A is, and that is authorization, what you are authorized to do. And the last A is what you did, is called the accounting. So basically those three A's stand for authenticate, authorize, and accounting. And the last A, which is accounting, is basically a log of what you've done. Let's go ahead and take a look at the official definition. So again, AAA offers three services, just like I mentioned. Authentication, which checks the user's credentials to verify their identity. So we need to authenticate who you are, just like a username and password on an email account, right? Authorization determines what you are allowed to do. So we can give you a set of rules of what you can do and what you can't do. For example, at my job, we do just network monitoring. When I remember the first day, I'll never forget, I tried to see what we were able to do. I typed config T, and it said, you're not allowed to do that. I might put a screenshot on for the thumbnail for this video and show y'all what it looked like. Anyways, accounting is what you have done. So basically a log of what you've done. Okay, he made this change. He made that change. He logged out. He logged in. So basically a log of what you can do. So this is just like a security. When he does his rounds, he, puts a log of what's happened.
What we gonna do now? Just sit here and wait for something to happen.
So this collects and stores information about logins and activity. Notice here this says in red, accounting is not supported with local AAA. And I'm going to show you the difference between local AAA versus a server-based AAA, right? Let's talk about first self-contained, sometimes they call it self-contained AAA or local AAA. Just think about just the usernames. Basically, here's the difference. The username and passwords are stored on the actual router, as opposed to server-based authentication like TACACS and Radius. We'll have a server with all the usernames and passwords, and that will check whether you're allowed access or not, right? With self-contained AAA, notice here, step 1 says we establish a connection with the router, whether it's Telnet or SSH, whatever, right? And then step 2, the router is going to prompt us. You know how when you log into a router, you get the screen that says, it has your banner and then the username and password fields for you to type in the username. That's what step 2 is. The router prompts you for the username and password. And step 3, the router just basically says, okay, your username is this, your password is that. Is that correct or not? Then he's going to grant you access or reject you. And that's basically it. As simple as that. That is local AAA. The username and passwords are stored locally on the router, as opposed to server-based AAA, where the server has the usernames and passwords, and the protocol is either going to be TACACS or Radius, which we'll discuss in the next 2 videos, and they will check to see if you are granted access or not. And I will discuss that further in the next video. Here's just a little brief description. The local AAA features allow you to configure the router so that the user authentication and the authorization attributes available currently on the AAA servers are available local on the router. So basically what I said, everything is local on the router. So if we need to grant you access, the username and passwords are stored on the router instead of on a separate server. The local database may act as a fallback method for several functions. So sometimes if you have, if you do have both local and server-based, Let's say the server is down. How are you going to be able to log on to this router? If you don't have any usernames and local usernames and passwords, back to this. So let's say you have a server-based authentication, right? Well, the server has the usernames and passwords over here, right? If that server is down, you're not going to be able to log on to this router. That's a pro to what local-based authentication is, a local-based AAA is, because the local if the server is down, you can log in with the local usernames and passwords here. The problem is it's not very scalable, because if you have hundreds of routers, they may all have different usernames and passwords. That's the difference between using usernames and passwords that are stored locally on a router. If we have a server with all the usernames, if we have hundreds of routers, all we have to do is just authenticate to the server. So these are the steps to configure AAA. You just basically type in AAA, new model. New AAA model of authentication is enabled with this command. It unlocks all the other AAA commands on a command line interface. Remember, this command will break the non-AAA line and also enable the password. So basically, if you have some VTY passwords and stuff like that, this will kind of break that. You're going to have to now use the local usernames and passwords on the router or switch, layer 3 switch. Once AAA is enabled, you can start to create method lists for the 3 services, A, and A. Pop quiz, what are they? Yes, authentication, authorization, and accounting. But remember, accounting is not done on local, so we can't check what you have done with local AAA. With the local database, you will need to define the local users first. So you just basically create the accounts, just like a username password for an email account. You do username, type in the username, and password, and then in the password. And then once that is completed, you create a method list for the local database. So you just AAA, authentication, login, default, local. I know this is not really straightforward, but just kind of remember this command. That's why you don't want to memorize these commands, but you can kind of question mark your way through it. But basically, you're just saying here, AAA authentication, right? The login method is going to, the login default method is going to be local, as opposed to, like, say, AAA or server-based authentication. We're just saying this is going to be local-based. And we're going to fire up Boson Netsim just to do a little hands-on with it, because I know it says just describe here, but we're going to play with a little bit here. Now, here's the privilege levels. You can, once you are logged in, you can tell them what they're able to do and what they can't do. That's the authorization portion. The privilege levels. This is what authorization is. It's the privilege levels. It defines what the user is allowed to do. If you do set up privilege levels, level 0 says you're only a few commands are available. You can see what they are once you question mark. Level 1 allows default exec user level and some show commands, not all of them, just show some. You do level 15, it grants them full access. So here's a couple examples of a privilege, setting up the privilege levels. Again, we're not going to do this in Boson Netsim. It doesn't require it. But basically, you just type in privilege exec level 7, and they say configure terminal. So notice it is possible to create custom privilege levels and assign commands to them. So normally, config terminal is basically like a level 15 command, but you can say, okay, level 7, you're allowed to do config terminal. Show running config too. I believe that is a level 15 command, if I'm not mistaken. This show command is level 15, but you can set it up to be a level 7, and that's what they're doing here. Same thing with this and that. Let's go ahead and fire up Boson Netsim and just play with a little bit of local authentication and exec authorization. All right, so here's the lab we're going to be working with. We got the workstation, the headquarters router, regional router, and the access server. Don't worry about the access server or the headquarters router. We're going to be doing configuration and the username and passwords on the regional router, and we're going to be accessing them from the workstation here. The access server, don't worry about that, because we're going to be doing TACACS and Radius in the next video. So we are not going to configure the username and password or deal with the server on this. Again, here's the topology with the IP addressing guide right here. Again, don't worry about the server or the headquarters router. Right for now, we're just concerned with the workstation and the regional router. Here's a couple of the commands right here. If you want to look over that, pause and freeze frame it for AAA authentication. Here's a couple more commands. And again, this username and password and stuff like that. Here's what we came to do. Task 1, configure local database authentication by using AAA. Step 1, turn AAA services on. How do you do that? AAA, new model. Simple as that. New AAA model of the authentication is enabled with this single command right here. So that was easy. So we're going to enable global config mode AAA new model. That was easy. Next step says in the local database, create a user with the username regional user and password regional password. How do we do that? Simple. We type in username and then a username, password, and then a password. So we do username. The username was regional user. Password is regional pass. Set the enable password to training. How do we do that? We just do enable password and then training. That's a simple fundamental right there. Step 4, configure login authentication to use the enable password as the default method. How do we do that? We say, once this is completed, the username and password, create a method list to use a local database. So we're going to say AAA authentication login default local. Now this is not very straightforward, right? So what I like to do is kind of question mark through these once they ask me to do, perform a specific step. And I believe you're allowed to question mark on the exam as well, but I don't think there's any AAA sims or anything like that on the exam. So we're going to log in. My bad. AAA authentication. We said the to use the enable password as the default method. So we're going to say login first because we're doing a login, and then we're going to say default, and then we're saying the default method is to use the enable password for authentication. So in other words, you want to authenticate to this device, you have to use the enable password. So default is enable. Right? What did we set the enable password to, right? It was training, right? So now it says here to log out of the router. So we're going to log out, exit. And now it's prompting us for username and password. I don't know if you remember, if you go back to the beginning, not the beginning, but the beginning of this lab, it didn't prompt us for a username and password. Now it is asking us for one. So now we just put in the enable password, which was training. And now we're back into the router, right? It says here, access the router through the console port. Which password should you use here and why? So basically, they want us to get in the, I believe, global user exec mode here, right? Enable, which is basically training. So we're logged into this via the console. I think that's a dumb question right there because there's no console port, but I guess you just got to double click on the router and that's simulating the console port. Which password should you use in here and why? Basically, we use the password, the enable password, because that's what we see as the login method. Create a login authentication method named local underscore authent and set it to authenticate users against the local database. So we're going to question mark our way through that as well. We're going to go to global config mode, AAA. We know it's AAA authentication. When you're dealing with all of this stuff, it's usually you start off with AAA authentication. And it says here to create a login authentication method. How do we do that? A login authentication method. We're going to do login. Next thing he says, it's going to be named local underscore authent. So now we're going to name it. So we do local underscore AUTHENT. Set it to authenticate against question mark. Set it to authenticate against users. Authenticate users against the local database. So we are going to set it to authenticate users against the local database. So simple as that. Local authent, local. And that's basically it. Apply the local authent to the VTY line. So basically, we're going to go into the VTY lines, which is line VTY. That's a CCNA fundamental. 0 through, looks like there's only 4 lines on this one. Normally, there's about 15, including the 0. So 16, really. It says create a login authentication. No, that we did that. Step 8 says apply that method to the VTY line. So we're going to say login, local password checking. Or let me see what authentication is. I don't know what that is. Use the default authentication list or use an authentication list with this name. We are doing a method. So we're going to say apply local authent to the VTY lines. I believe it's local password checking. think that's all we really need to do because we're not doing a default authentication list. So just log in local. No, that's just using a local authentication list. So let's do this. The default authentication list is actually enabled. So we don't want to do, this is the enable password. So we don't want to do that. We're creating an authentication list named local authent. Let's do this. Log in and then authentication. Use an authentication list with this name. We're doing an authentication method. Local underscore authent. Let's try that. Local underscore authent. Right? Because then after that, there's nothing else. So I'm thinking that's what we want to do. From the workstation, telnet to regional 10112. And how did regional authenticate when you use to telnet? When you use telnet to connect. So we're going to go to the workstation, telnet to regional. So telnet 10.1.1.2. Notice it's prompting us for a username password. How are we going to authenticate? Well, there's only one username password, right? Which is regional user and user pass, regional pass. So let's try that. Regional user, password regional pass. And now we're on the device. Question says here, how did regional authenticate when you used telnet to connect? Basically authenticated using the local authent lines, but then it says here to disconnect the telnet session. Let's see what he says. Task 1, question 9 says here, regional will now use the local user database to authenticate. So that's basically what we did here. Step 10, disconnect from the telnet session. So basically we are just going to exit. So we're going to exit and we disconnected. Okay, task 2, configure AAA exec authorization by using a local user database. So we're going to create the local user database, but now we're going to be setting authorization. Remember, we did the authentication part here. Now we're doing authorization, what they're allowed to do, right? So I didn't think it was on this lab, but apparently it is. So we're going to go back to regional. In the local database on regional, create a user with the username regional admin and a password admin password. Assign a privilege level 15 to this user. What's privilege level 15? Privilege level 15 is full access, right? Level 1 is user exec level. That's with the little greater than symbol. That's y'all pop quiz for today. What is the greater than symbol called in computing? Level 0, only a few commands are available. So right now they said they want us to give them full access. Create the user, give them full access. Now this is the tricky part here. So first, let's create the username. We're going to go to enable mode, which the password was training, right? We did that. Enable password was training. Now we're in user exec mode or privileged exec mode. Remember, privileged exec mode is with the hashtag. We're going to go to global config mode. And now we are going to create the username regional admin. And then you would think the password comes next, but no, the privilege level comes next because now we want to set a privilege level. They asked us out of order here. Guess to kind of throw us off. Now you do the password. And the password was admin pass. So now they want us, step 2 says telnet from the workstation to regional and authenticate as the user regional admin. Right? Remember, we set them to level 15. So we're going to go to workstation, get out of this. And now we're going to try to telnet back to the regional. So from here, we're going to telnet to regional with the username regional admin, the one we just created right here, and the password admin pass, right? ADMINPASS. And now it says here, which privilege level have you been placed at and why? Well, this greater than symbol means we're at user exec mode. We're not a privileged exec mode. Privileged exec mode is with the hashtag, right? So why have we been placed here? Well, we didn't say to check for authorization. So, and that's what we need to do here. On regional, create an exec authorization method. So now first it says here, step 4, disconnect the telnet session. We're going to get out of this. We're going to get out of this. So on regional, go to regional, create an exec authorization method named local author. So we're going to we're going to go to log in here with the enable password. I mean, not the enable password, but yeah, with the enable password, but we're using the enable password here. We're going to go to privileged exec mode with the same password. We are going to, says here, to create an exec authorization method named local author. So we're going to global config mode, an authorization method named local author. So we're not going to do AAA authentication, right? We're doing AAA authorization. That's the difference here. This kind of threw me off last time. Note that these two words look the same, but one is authentication, which is what? Authentication checks the user's credentials to verify their identity. Authorization determines what the user is allowed to do. Accounting is not available because it's not supported with local AAA. So we do AAA authorization here. And then we're going to say exec. Named authorization list is what? Local author is what we're going to name it. Local underscore author. To use the local database, that's what it says here. Configure authorization to be performed against the local router's database. You could probably lock yourself out if you don't tell them where to check for username and passwords and stuff. Or it may just let you on. Who knows? So the author, we're going to check the local database to check for the username and passwords. Then here it says, on regional, step 6, apply local author as an authorization method for the VTY lines. So we're going to go to the VTY lines. We said there's only 4 of them or 5 of them here. My bad. Line VTY 0 through 4. And then we're going to say what options we have here. Authorization, right? So authorization is what we're looking for. And exec, use an authorization list with this name. What's the name of it? Local underscore author. And then what else? That's it. We have a CAS return here, so we're done. Now, telnet from the workstation to regional and authenticate using, as user, regional admin. So we're going to go here. We're going to telnet from the workstation back to regional. And when we're logged in, last time it threw us onto user exec mode, which was level 1, right? We want to go to level 15 because that's what we set it as. So we're telnetting back. We're saying regional admin. We're going to go on with regional, I believe it was pass. Nope, that's not what it was. It was admin pass. My bad. Admin pass was the password. So we're going to telnet back. And notice it kicked us out that time. Regional admin. And it's admin pass. And after he logs in, he says, which privilege level have you been placed at and why? Now we got the hashtag, which means we've been placed in level 15, full access. I should have put what they are, right? Level 0, only a few commands. This is the greater than symbol. That's your pop quiz for today, right? And then this right here is the hashtag, which means we have full access to do what we want. Disconnect the telnet session. We do that by just doing exit. That's simple enough. We're not going to do task 3 because now they want us to authenticate using the ACS database, which is this guy right here. We're going to save that for Radius and TACAX, which is the next couple videos. That is all I got for y'all today. That is my YouTube page. That is my Twitter handle. Go ahead and add me on Twitter. If you like this video, please go ahead and click the like button. If you have any questions or comments or anything like that, go ahead and put a comment below. Go ahead and share this video on your social media networks. If you have Instagram, let them know that I'm on my journey to get my CCNP certification. And if you want to follow along, tell them to follow this channel. Also, don't forget, y'all pop quiz for today is, what is that greater than symbol in computing? What is that symbol called? It's not the carriage return, I don't believe. What is that symbol called? For now, please comment, like, subscribe to the network.